Hey, I'm Sharon Mcmahon from Here's Where It Gets Interesting, and we tell stories that maybe you haven't heard before. We love to talk about history and stories that are often excluded from history books, maybe angles of stories that you have never considered. And we also love talking with thought leaders. Consistency is so important when you're running a podcast because your listeners need to know what to expect. Right? If people have no idea what day is this coming out or if you're ever going to start again, it's hard to get invested in the show. I mean, I know that I have looked online on a podcast platform, found a show that I found interesting before, and then saw that they have not released a new episode in 11 weeks. And it makes me wonder if there's nothing that indicates it. It makes me wonder, like, well, are they done with this? Is it coming back? I don't necessarily want to invest myself in something that I don't know if it is going to continue. So educating your listeners on what to expect helps them want to become invested. If you don't give them something to invest in, they're not going to want to waste their time on it. Staying motivated during busy times of year, I think, is a challenge for anybody who works in any job, frankly. But this is one of those things where I feel a significant sense of duty to the community that we've established. They've invested their time in listening to us, and we invest our time in them. So it becomes this reciprocal relationship. It's kind of like if you have if you have a really good friend and they make all the effort and you make none, it's not going to continue, right? So if you want to continue to see the success of your show over the long run, people need to feel like you're invested in them. So that's part of what, continues to motivate me, is making sure that people who have invested their time in us feel like that relationship is reciprocated. That's a great question. Okay, what do I do when I feel like I'm starting to lose momentum? A lot of times I will ask people on my team, what do you think of this idea? Or I will poll my audience. What would you like to see us do next? And sometimes people have great ideas that you had not considered before. I think it's important to know that you're not the only person with all the ideas. And often I have gotten fantastic ideas from people who, like they had presented things that I'd never even considered. So asking other people, especially people in your audience who care about your show, who want to see you do well, who are avid listeners who've invested their time into your community, they'll tell you what they want to hear. And so sometimes asking people, what can I do for you next? Those ideas that come back are often energizing to me. I think it really helps if you're just getting started with running a show to know who your listener is. Who is your ideal listener? Because if you're talking to everybody, you're talking to nobody, right? If you think that everybody is going to listen to your show, you're wrong. If you think you're talking to both gamers and members of Congress, you're probably wrong. It's definitely not both of those. So you have to know who you're talking to, and you have to have an understanding of what kind of content is going to best serve that audience. You can make podcasts all day long just for your own amusement, if that's what your goal is. But if you want to serve a community, you have to keep the listener in mind. And knowing who your listener is and knowing that your listener isn't everybody is actually tremendously freeing. Right? Because if you think your listener is everybody, then your head will constantly be swirling, wondering like, well, how will the gamers take it? What will the members of Congress think? But if you narrow it down to who you're talking to, it becomes a lot easier to serve that community. You have to be comfortable with the idea that you need to attract the right people and repel the wrong ones. And that sounds very scary to people who are just getting started. Like, I don't want to repel anybody. But in order to attract the right people, you have to repel the wrong people. Not in a mean way, not in a like, no gamers here kind of scenario. but you just have to know that your content is for some people and not others.